click the start streaming button.
So we've started streaming?
Potentially, I'm just waiting for it to come through to, yep, it's receiving my content on YouTube.
I'll start streaming some water.
Yep, sounds good.
All right.
The internet can totally see you now, says YouTube. And
Excellent.
we're just loading it. Yep, it's looking good.
All right.
Now I can do the old copy into there.
We're starting 2 minutes early, so if you're watching this delayed, so not live, skip ahead 2 minutes, and then we should be getting into it and talking to people. But we thought we'd start 2 minutes early because there's always this weird thing where we're waiting for people to get in, and
Yeah, waiting and publishing posts on all our socials.
there's not much point talking just yet if there's no one to listen live, because that's the whole point of doing it live. So we're just waiting for everyone to get in. But we've got plenty of things to talk about.
Yeah, we've got a few people in. Someone said hello in the chat.
Hello.
So, yeah, that's nice.
Okay.
YouTube's view counter is saying that no people are watching, which is obviously proving to be very accurate at the moment.
We can always hear you good. Well, hopefully you can hear us. Everything looks good, the levels there. So I think Tim hasn't screwed up.
No, I'm getting a bit of experience doing this, which is good.
The once a month that we do it.
Yeah.
Or maybe twice.
Maybe we'll have to do some more public live streams on our main channel at some point.
Yeah, well, we want to do a build on the channel probably in a couple of weeks. A week or so. When you've got have you got everything for that build?
Well, I still need my 2950X. It's up to you
Right.
to get your bundle of stuff that you need for yours. And
Well, you'll have to send me everything you ordered, and I'll reorder, because you're using the 500D. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, which I'm not sure fits the X399 creation.
Well, can you check that for me before I order?
I measured it, and it seems like it'll be touch and go.
I think it will fit.
It depends what will happen when we actually put in there. But I've also got the RM750X, the H150i, and some stuff I've carried over from my old build. So
okay. So yeah, we could be doing some sort of Threadripper 2950X build off.
Yep.
It could be quite entertaining. We'll also have to get my camera and mount it from the top so you can alternate or do like picture in picture, because having just the one camera here won't work that well.
That'll be a boring live stream. We need to up the ante.
We do.
Well, we've got a second capture card.
Yeah.
Or use two capture cards on one system.
I don't know, but get that PC built in here. We'll test that first with maybe the Patreon members in a week or so. And
yeah, should be good.
Steve, how many days are you away from your house? I'm not actually going to try and work that out in my head, but it was quite a drive today, quite a painful drive.
It's always bad in Melbourne.
Yeah, but it was worse. It was worse than normal. It took me about half an hour longer, which admittedly isn't, I suppose, that bad of a delay. But yeah, when you start, stop for half an hour, it's very, very painful. But anyway, we've got a few people in. Let me try that again without choking. We've got a few people in here, so we should probably start talking about a few things.
Yeah, already 3.5 minutes in, so hopefully all the people have skipped to this point.
Yep, yeah.
Who are watching this later.
Yeah, note for that. Well, you could maybe pin a comment saying for those who watched it later, we didn't start talking till about 3 minutes in. So, yeah, we got PAX this weekend. We're leaving early tomorrow morning. We're hopefully getting in there quite early, and we're making probably 2 videos of the event, or however many is warranted. But we're doing at least 2 videos. We have to, because Cooler Master is sponsoring us. I was going to say sponsoring us, not Corsair. Cooler Master.
That's right.
So we're doing a dedicated video for them. Hopefully they have something new and exciting.
Which I doubt, because it's PAX Australia, but...
Hopefully they do. And then we're just going to do a general video showing the show itself. We actually want to... we've booked in to see a ray tracing demo in Metro.
Yeah, I think they said they had some sort of thing there, whether that was... Hopefully, fingers crossed, it's actual gameplay. I'm not sure whether it's different, but...
Well, we haven't seen it firsthand yet, have we?
No, we haven't seen any ray tracing, because we obviously didn't go to the RTX launch.
Yeah. Yep.
I mean, to be fair, we can download the Star Wars. There's a few demos you can download, but they're boring. They're not actual games, so...
Yep.
So
yeah, there's potential for some interesting stuff.
Oh yeah, and of course, anyone who's coming to PAX Australia, if you see us on the show floor, feel free to shout out and say hi. But obviously, all of you guys will be Patreon members, so we will be having a Patreon meetup that we're organising in the Discord.
Saturday afternoon. Don't know
Saturday
where.
evening.
Evening. Okay.
So it'll be sort of like a dinner, drinks at a pub
Okay.
somewhere.
Okay, cool.
That's the plan.
Okay. Well, that's late afternoon. But
It probably will be like a late afternoon start,
Okay.
considering we won't want to go too late. So
Yep.
we haven't finalised the exact details, but if you're in our Discord chat, we'll be talking about that probably later today to finalise where we're going and all that. So if you want to meet up with us, say hi, grab a drink, do it Aussie style.
yep.
Yeah, we'll be doing that. And we'll only be there. We'll definitely be there Friday for the show, and we're not sure how long we'll be there Saturday, and we won't be there Sunday. So if you're planning to come on Sunday, to look out for us. We won't be there. Sorry.
Yeah, unlikely unless.
Very unlikely.
Yeah.
Unless we stuff up somehow, we have to go back for another day.
Yeah, or there's just a whole heap of cool stuff, which seems unlikely. But I don't know.
It seems like it is getting bigger every year.
Yeah, it was supposed to be really good last year, but I don't know what new products were sort of unveiled or announced.
I don't think there was any actual unveilings. It was just more just a...
Yeah. Anyway, we'll see what's what. But yeah, if you have any questions or things you want us to discuss, let us know. We're planning on talking about the 9900K reviews, follow up to the Linus and OC 3D TV stuff, whatever else about the 9900K, and then sort of maybe touch on the PT stuff. I mean, that's pretty much done, but there's a few final thoughts and things there.
Yep.
And yeah, then we've probably got a couple of other things that we'll talk about. But anyway, we'll start with the 9900K. Actually, I've got plans for hopefully, well, Monday night is the Threadripper 12 core and 24 core review. So I'm going to be, that's another reason why we probably won't go to PAX on Sunday, because I've got to get home. Those processors arrived today. So I got a message from TNT to say that my wife signed for them. They're delivered. So Sunday I've got to test them. Monday morning I'll probably wrap up the testing, film, edit, upload by, I think it's a midnight release for that one.
Yeah.
So I've got 2 full days. Then as soon as that's done, I'm probably going to do the Z390 VRM testing part 1, of which I'm going to do 3 parts. So part 1 will be looking at the 4 flagship or pretty close to flagship boards. So we're going to have the Asus Hero, the Gigabyte Master, the Godlike. I would have preferred the Ace, but I can't get that just yet.
Is the Ace above the Godlike?
No, the Godlike's stupid. And then the Ace, I think, off memory, is 12 phase, so doubled 6 phase.
Yep.
And then who did I miss? ASRock, the Taichi Ultimate. So I've tested 3 of those boards. I'm getting the Asus board early next week. We'll finally see what that board's all about. I'll get some proper high-res, crystal clear photos of it.
Let's find those doublers, eh?
I don't know if Buildzoid will have done his video before then. It'd be kind of cool if he has, because that would be another
Is he
source.
doing one?
I don't know. I've heard. Since he does this kind of stuff, it seems like it would be a wise board to investigate, since people generally don't care. But there seems like there's a lot of controversy around this board as to what it actually is. We're pretty confident we know what it is, but it would be good to have someone else actually say what it is, and someone with his kind of authority on these issues. And then I would like to do, so I'm going to test the 4 flagship or high-end Z390 boards. Then I'm going to add another 4 boards, which will be 4 mid-range boards from each of those companies. And then 4 of the absolute cheapest boards. So if you're going and buying the cheapest Z390 board, how does it go with the 9900K? And I'm not suggesting that you're going to spend $130 on your motherboard and use a 9900K, but no doubt people will, and it sort of speaks to how OEMs are configuring their systems. And if those 4 low-end boards from all 4 manufacturers are 95 watt limited, that's kind of a big deal. Tim and I were discussing this earlier. So I want to get that done. Then I want to do a follow-up. I want to do another 9900K review. So I want to do, Tim and I were discussing this before, we want to clearly specify a minimum spec and a maximum spec for the 900K. So the maximum spec is actually running at the Intel multiplier table, so 4.7 times for that 8-core load.
Yeah, well,
with unlimited.
Yeah.
No power unlimited everything, and then 95 watt, which is, well, the 95 watt TDP limit. And I want to test the 9900K against something like the 2700X and probably a few other CPUs at the minimum spec and then the maximum spec, and forget about everything in between.
Yeah, because there's been a lot of confusion, I think, over the past couple of weeks about what Intel says in their documents for their CPUs, what they list on ARC and all that sort of thing, and what people are seeing in actual benchmarks. Because we've obviously seen with our testing, we tested the 9900K on a board that doesn't have a PL2 time limit. So basically it will run at the maximum all-core multiplier for as long as it possibly can. The ASUS boards and some other boards, it seems like, use a time limit for the PL2. And depending on how you read Intel specs, depending on what you look at, there's a whole range of things that come up as to how those things should be configured. So it basically seems like, people are getting really confused about, should you be testing these processors using Intel's official spec, and what is that spec? Or should we be testing it with these unlimited things? And when you look into the spec, the unlimited spec is a spec. It is within Intel's...
It's not overclocking.
It's not overclocking. So, and the thing that people get confused about the most is the PL2 time limit. So the way that the CPUs work with their, turbo boost algorithms and everything is there's two power limits. You've got PL1, which is your short burst power. So this will be trying to run your CPU as high as possible.
What it can do, basically.
It's basically
unleashed.
That burst at the start is your PL1, I believe. I might have got these around the wrong way, but one of them is your burst, one of them is your long run power, basically.
PL2's, there's PL3, PL4. It's quite complicated.
Yeah.
But yeah, so PL1, to my knowledge, is the 95 watt.
Yeah, so I might have got those. Yeah, so PL1 is your base frequency and power.
Yes, because there's the timer limit as well. PL1.
Yeah.
Or is that
PL2 is your short duration burst, and then there's PL3, which is like your spikes. I think that's how it works.
Because there's the tau one as well.
Yeah. So basically, with PL2, which I think so PL2, your short duration burst. Some systems have that configured to be a certain time. So that could be 30 seconds, it could be 10 seconds. And that determines, it might push up your TDP or your power limit to 150 watts or 220 watts or 120 watts or something. It's always above that TDP. So there's some confusion about Intel's documents, whether Intel specifies a time that is the spec for how long that PL2 should last. So how long you should be pushing up well above the TDP. And the time limit isn't a firm time limit. If you read the documents, it's a guideline for board makers and especially laptop vendors as to, you should be running your systems in PL2 for at least this time. So it might be 30 seconds, say.
Yeah.
And it's especially key for a 15 watt laptop processor saying, you should be bursting for 8 seconds, 20 seconds, whatever, and then you should be cutting back down to the TDP. But the Intel spec lets board vendors or any manufacturer run it as long as they want.
So yeah, it's very vague in that sense.
Yes.
Okay, so haven't thought all this through properly, but my main issue is, and I sort of said this in my little behind the scenes video the other day, we have the new Z390 chipsets. They don't need to exist. They have a couple of extra features that none of you guys care about. The only reason we have Z390 is to signify that Z390 boards are 8-core ready. Some of the Z370 boards are going to run like garbage with the 8-core processor installed.
Yep.
They're going to be heavily power limited and run nowhere near like what you're expecting.
Because let's be honest, the two features they added, which are Wi-Fi and a few extra...
native USB 3.1 gen, which a lot of the boards had anyway through a third-party controller. So that's a useless feature to include. It doesn't warrant the introduction of another high-end chipset. The whole point of Z390 is so you can be confident that you can slot your 8-core CPU in there, your 9900K or even your 8700K, and got full performance. It runs as should because the board can handle it. So there really shouldn't be, there shouldn't be any Z390 boards with a 4-phase VRM. There should be 6 phases minimum as far as I can tell, or 4-phase actually doubled. So that's a problem there because people are buying a Z390 board, assuming it can run the 9900K fully unleashed like you're seeing in a lot of the reviews. So because it's all over the place and it's a complete mess, you really can't review the 9900K the way we have or the way Linus has. You've got to do it both ways.
Yeah.
I feel.
Yeah, and that's what we're coming back to the minimum and maximum spec discussion, is that you're going to have these low-end boards that are because of a variety of reasons. It might be their VRM is not up to the task, or they've just limited it in some way. And to be fair, it's not really a limit. It's more they've just configured it to a lower PL2 time allowance for their board for whatever reason. It's still within spec. It's not like it's running below the spec.
No, some
in the spec.
Some of them might have done it just because they accidentally did it, and they'll
Yeah.
release a BIOS update, and then it will be unlimited, like you see on something like the Godlike, or more likely that if you get the absolute cheapest Z390 board. So when I buy these 4 boards, if they're all power limited, it's probably because they need to be power limited to survive more than a couple of months.
Yeah, and that's the thing, is that we're in this situation now where Intel isn't providing a hard spec, as in like you need to run these clock speeds at this, you need to run this power at this. It's a range. And AMD's already been doing the same thing with their XFR overclocking, which is not really overclocking, it's just, it will run the CPU up to the limits that your board and cooler allow. Intel is kind of doing the same thing, but motherboard vendors seem to have a bit more control over what limits they can provide for certain things, and the cooler doesn't seem to impact it all that much. It just throttles it. So yeah, it's basically we're in this situation where you could buy a board and you have no idea where you're going to fall in that range of the spec. Are you going to be at minimum or are you going to be at maximum? Can you run 4.7 gigahertz all core for an unlimited amount of time, or are you going to fall down to 95 watts within 10 seconds?
That's crucial information, and I plan on testing 12 boards, and right now I have no idea out of the box. So if I just take them out of the box, load the XMP, because let's be honest, that's probably the minimum you should do. Load the XMP, go into Windows, and then I have to run a Blender, have XTU open, see if we're seeing any kind of throttling. What frequency is it maintaining?
Yeah,
because it's perfectly reasonable that someone would say, okay, I want to build a 900K system because I want to do mostly rendering, but at times I play a bit of Fortnite or CSGO or something like that. So I want it to be pretty good at gaming. So they don't want a high-end gaming motherboard. They don't want 10 gigabit LAN or any of the whiz-bang features. They just buy a $130, $150 motherboard, which seems reasonable enough. They stick a stupidly expensive CPU on there, and then it's not running anywhere near, the rendering performance isn't anywhere near what they were expecting.
Yeah, and it comes, I think, as well from, in the past, like people who are upgrading from, say 5 generations old platforms, where you could buy a motherboard and it's pretty much they're pretty much all the same. Like you put the CPU and it runs the same. Whereas there's been sort of a divergence in Intel spec from what they're claiming is the base frequencies and, your TDP, which is referred to the base clocks, to, the boost clocks are so much higher than they ever were that, the power limits are so much different, the CPUs run differently in how quickly they boost and all that sort of thing, that a motherboard actually now has so much more of an impact on your system performance than it would have when, say, someone built their last system.
That's right.
So people are coming into buying 8700Ks and 9900Ks or whatever, and now you actually have to look into the motherboard to make sure that you're getting something that's delivering the maximum spec and not the minimum spec.
Yeah, and the difference between the minimum and the maximum is massive. As you say, it's for the all-core, it's about, 500 megahertz it can be around there.
Yeah.
So that's still that's still a significant figure, and it means you're going to see very different thermals, very different power consumption, and then very different performance. So it's important to know which one you're getting, and if you do manually remove that limit, are you significantly shortening the life of your board if you do some renders and stuff. So what I wanted to move on to was this, just to recap quickly. So I'm going to assume here that all you guys saw my video titled, what was it? The 9900K testing. Core i9 9900K power and thermals. Did Linus get it wrong? So in that video, I basically, I gave Linus an OC 3D TV an out. I said it's not necessarily their fault. They are testing the Intel spec, and they haven't changed spec during the testing. They've picked the minimum spec, and they've done that for all their benchmarking, which in my opinion is perfectly acceptable. What I was trying to do was explain why their results are so different to ours. And you might think, well, why did you even bother doing that? Is that your place to even have to do that? And the reason I did that was because I had quite literally hundreds of viewers abusing OC 3D TV, and then a lot of you guys were getting concerned about Linus, and he hadn't even released his video yet. So I had a large amount of viewers abusing them, saying that they're shills and they're faking their results and yada, yada, yada. Then I had another large group of viewers who were saying, we don't know how to benchmark, and we're AMD fanboys and trying to make Intel look bad. The CPU doesn't really run hot. We've done it wrong. Add whatever else you can imagine they would have been saying in there. So I thought, okay, this is a serious issue. A lot of you guys were concerned about Linus's video dropping, and that was going to get, million plus views. And the 2700X isn't a much hotter CPU than the 1900K. That's quite laughable. So it started as, a few of you were requesting somewhat of a hit piece. Get into Linus, tear him to shreds. What he's doing is bad. Then the more I looked into it, I'm like, well, this is more on Intel. Like, this is what we were talking about with the 8700 non-K.
Yeah, and to be fair to Intel, it's not like this. People are testing these CPUs outside of what they are saying the CPUs run at.
They're just too. They're not being clear enough.
Yes, it's very their specifications are very unclear.
They're being Intel and Nvidia transparent.
And Steve and I were talking before about how a lot of people get really confused about the TDP and what the TDP means. And we've said so many times on the channel before that it's referred to the base clock, but personally, I don't think they should report the TDP at all. Because if you're not going to give specific power consumption metrics for running at base clock and running at maximum clock, they should just not say. Because for a consumer who's buying the product off the shelf, the TDP does not matter. It's not relevant. It's not relevant for AMD CPUs. It's not relevant for Intel CPUs. There's no reason for a consumer to know. The reason why they need the TDP is for system integrators and builders, especially for laptop chips, who are trying to get these products and having to design cooling solutions for the products.
Yeah,
that's why they need the TDP. But then people come to channels and they're like, oh, but isn't this a 95 watt CPU? And some people are testing with the 95 watt limit. That's what Intel says on their website.
Yeah, because they're pushing the envelope so far now, though, I disagree and say that we do need that. So
we don't need the TDP. We need actual data.
Well,
we need
you could
what will this run at maximum, what will it run at minimum.
One way to solve this problem is you could say that the 9900K is a configurable CPU. It has a 95 watt TDP or it has a 145 watt TDP.
Yeah, but that's not what they say.
No, but that's what they need to say. And
that's what I'm saying. They should either do that or not say at all.
Well, sure. And then ASUS needs to say, now the Strix E is a 95 watt configured motherboard.
Yep.
And then the Hero, if it was a better board than it is a 145 watt configured board. So they both support the CPU at different configurations. Because then there's the other problem. These CPUs ship without a cooler.
Yeah, and this is what one of these people in the chat is saying here. It says, TDP is somewhat important to know if it was accurate and you're buying aftermarket coolers and want to make sure the cooler won't throttle.
100%.
That's true, except the TDP doesn't tell you that right now.
No, that's the point. But if the motherboard's configured to a 95 watt TDP, then you only need like a 100 watt cooler. Or if you get 130, you can run it a bit quieter. If it says the motherboard's configured to 145 watts, then you go, oh, okay, well, I'm going to need like a 200 watt cooler to run at reasonable operating volumes. At the very least, I want a 145 or 150 watt cooler.
Yep.
And that makes your your purchasing decision a whole lot easier because you know exactly what cooler you have to buy. You don't go and buy, if you go and buy a 240 millimeter closed loop cooler and you stick that thing on the 1900K on an unlimited board, those fans will be screaming every time you put that thing under load.
Yeah.
Because it's running up near 100 degrees.
Yeah, and I mean, I think, for a long time with Intel CPU, let's be fair, Intel, they haven't changed their metrics at all for years. They're using the same TDP calculations.
Yeah.
They're doing everything the same, but they need to be updated to the way modern processors work. And modern processors don't stick to the TDP like they did, many, many years ago when you just had a single clock speed. The turbo boost didn't exist. So circling back, the whole point of that video was to say, guys, chill out, okay? We're not doing anything wrong. They're not doing anything wrong.
we're showing you what the CPU can do unleashed. They're showing you what it does on a leash, 95 watt leash. Basically, to be technically correct, you should really show both.
Yeah.
It's
important now.
Yeah, it's important. It's as simple as that. We really should show both, and that's what I'm going to go back and do.
And I think as well, if you're only going to show one, you have to make sure that you've tested everything under the same conditions. And I think some of the reporting that we've seen for things like 8700K versus 9900K has been...
And that's a very important thing to bring up. So Linus, again, I talked about the common sense test.
Yeah, exactly. They failed the common sense
test. They failed the common... And OC3D TV...
failed the common sense.
Well, so on a completely different level to Linus Tech Tips.
Yeah, so the issue is, right, that they either show an 8700K consuming more power or roughly the same amount of power and lower or roughly the same thermals as a 9900K, which fails the logic test straight away because it has a higher clock speed and more cores. So there's no way underload it should be using the
straight away, number one rule. Anyone that showed the 9900K using the same or less power than the 8700K completely botched their testing.
Yeah. And the issue is that they've very likely almost certainly tested the 8700K on a PL2 unlimited board, and they've tested the 9900K on a PL2 limited board.
And the interesting thing with that is, if you update the BIOS of a Z370 board that runs the 8700K unlimited, there's a 99% chance it'll do the same with the 9900K.
Yep.
Because I haven't found any board... So the same boards that limited the 8700K without removing the limits do the same to the 9900K and vice versa. Yep. So OC3D TV and Linus Tech Tips would have been better off just testing the 9900K on the same board they tested the 8700K.
Yeah. Or if they were gung-ho and using Z390, they'd have to go back and test all the other CPUs, like 8700K, on that board. And the issue is that I think a lot of people have just assumed that you can switch from Z370 to Z390. All the limits are the same. The CPUs are going to run the same. But in actual fact, by making that switch, they might have inadvertently switched from a limited to an unlimited board or around the other way.
So what I did in this case, because I had the CPU for a long time. So admittedly, I had a lot of time, but I did a Jay's 2 cents and left it till the last minute. But I did that because there was BIOS updates coming in constantly. So I thought, well, we're not in a hurry here. And then I did get a bit caught out with the Principal Technologies things, then the RTX 2070 launch, and then everything else that followed right up to the 900K launch. So I didn't have as much time as I wanted. But what I did was, I got the godlike motherboard, I stuck the 9900K on there, I did my testing, everything passed the common sense test. It was using more power as expected, not quite as much more as I would have thought, but it was still using more power. It ran bloody hot, and the performance in the applications was about where I'd expect it to be. I then threw the 8700K on that board, ran Cinebench, ran Blender, and I got the exact same numbers. So I'm like, cool, that's good, that checks out. Power draw was very similar, temps were very similar, so I'm like, that's good enough. I don't have to... Normally I would fully retest, but in that instance, it wasn't really warranted. My 8700K data was pretty up to date. And OC3D TV, their 2700X data will be day one stuff. Like, as far as I can tell, he doesn't update.
Yep.
I mean, we've talked about this a bit in the Discord chat. I'll try and summarize. So I didn't really call him out. I just said, here's some results that people are concerned about. I'm going to explain why they are the way they are. Then he did a response video, which for the most part was perfectly fine. He didn't really respond to anything or add any information, at least at a satisfactory level, I believe, but whatever. And that was sort of that. A few of his fans got really annoyed and started attacking us, saying that we unfairly attacked him, which we never did. But okay, whatever.
That's just YouTube.
That's just YouTube, so we just ignore those or have a bit of a laugh at them, maybe share them with you guys in #fun. And that's that. And straight away I looked at his power thing and I said, okay, Tom Logan, can you explain to me how you're using less power than the 8700K out of the box? Because he kept focusing on his overclock. He's like, look, when I'm overclocking it to 5 gigahertz, it's not throttling. I said, forget about your overclocking results. It's your stock results that I'm concerned about.
Yeah.
Because they don't come... the overclocking thing's a whole separate issue. Let's get it right out of the box before adding, another layer of complexity to it. So I said to him, can you explain why the 8700K, if the 9900K isn't power limited, then how is it using less power than a CPU with less cores on the same process node clocked lower? How is that possible?
Yeah, and let's be honest, like, we don't go into these reviews thinking that we have no idea how these chips are going to perform. You can roughly figure out for pretty much everything.
It's not first gen Ryzen.
Yeah, from clock speeds, from core count, and even if there's a process node change, it's typically reasonably well known what sort of gains you might get in terms of efficiency.
Yeah, I mean,
and efficiency usually just changes, things like how high you can clock it and how many cores and what's your IPC. If they change the architecture, there might be some gains.
Yeah, it adds a bit of unknown, but when it's the same process node, it's just got an extra plus tacked on the end for marketing purposes, and whatever. So that was that, and he didn't answer that, so I was like, okay, whatever. And then we sort of moved on, and then he posted a few more things saying that he's in the right. He hasn't done anything wrong. He started to get a little bit more defensive with it. So I went and had dinner, came back to my computer, and I thought, I know he's power limited beyond a shadow of a doubt. I know he is power limited. There's no getting around that. So I thought, I wonder if he's tested any other motherboards. Maybe some motherboards that I've tested. Because that was the problem. He's using a motherboard that I don't currently have. I'll get it next week, but until then I don't know. And then I'd have to go back and load the exact BIOS he tested with.
Yeah.
Anyway, turns out he used the MSI Z390 Ace, which is the 12-phase model, and I've tested with the model under that. And it turns out that his power did go up, and he was starting to sort of see more in line with what we were seeing. It'd be good if we could screen share to walk the guys through this, but in short, power consumption increased. Now, power consumption increasing on its own, if you just have that chart, means absolutely nothing, because it just means, okay, is it actually running faster, or is the board just adding more voltage? Because you can increase power consumption without increasing performance simply by increasing voltage. So to see whether you're actually getting more performance, you have to look at a performance benchmark, and you go over to his Blender benchmarks, and for whatever, I think it was about a 15 or nearly 15 to 20% increase in power, he was seeing a 20% increase in performance. So it's not just overvolting, it's actually running at higher frequencies, and that is the result of the added power consumption. And I tweeted that out. I mean, I've linked it in the Discord chat, so I imagine you guys have already seen it. But basically, he was showing that the ASUS boards out of the box, at least with the BIOS he was testing with, are all 95 watt limited. So he saw a 20% performance uplift in Blender, and we're talking about a Blender workload that takes 26 seconds uncapped or 31 seconds capped. So that's only at the most, that's a 31-second test. Okay? So that's not the hour-long test I run. So he's seeing a 20% performance uplift within a 31-second window. So you're still running for an undetermined amount of seconds. He's running uncapped, so that number, that margin is only going to grow over a longer test.
Yep.
So the troubling thing about all this is, I honestly think he doesn't really know what we're talking about here. I don't think he understands the subject, because it's baffling, but these results where he debunks himself were published 3 days before I even made my video, and they were published 4 days before he made his response saying that he's not power limited. So I'm a bit baffled by all this. I don't know what's going on.
Yeah, I don't know. It seems like surely as a reviewer you would sort of look at your results, and you should be checking over your results, not just publishing them on face value, to make sure that again, it passes the common sense test. So it's kind of like you should have seen that error and corrected and gone back and retested either one of the CPUs to make sure that it was more in line. And to be fair, it's not about making sure that your results are in line with what you expect. You don't want to control your testing so heavily that you're expecting a 15% margin, you get a 15% margin. You just want to make sure that things that sound wrong aren't in your testing. Things like a chip with more power, that it has a higher
Well,
clock speed
it's-
and more cores using less power.
I agree. It's that, but I think it goes even a bit beyond that, because if he had have simply said, okay, guys, I got a 65 watt degree temperature. It's using slightly less power than the 8700K. Now, that doesn't look right. That doesn't pass the common sense test. However, the reason that is the case is because the Z390 board that I'm using has a 4-phase VRM, and because of that, it's limited to 95 watts out of the box. This is the only board I have on hand right now. I can't test a better board,
Yep.
and therefore take the results for what they are. This is what a lot of you will see when you buy this board. The result, like the crazy thing is he hasn't done anything wrong. He hasn't messed up his testing. He just hasn't understood the results that he's got and why he's got. Like, when was the last time you saw a motherboard review? Motherboard reviews suck. They've sucked for so long. I stopped doing them. We used to do roundups and we'd test 12 Z170 boards, and the graph was like that, and every bar it was just like that. It was like the deviation was margin of error, if that. It was like all within the margin of error. They were the most boring things ever to do. And Tiny Tom Logan pumps out more motherboard reviews than anyone else on planet Earth. So he has to be used to seeing them all with boring graphs that tell you nothing. So you might as well just talk about how many USB ports they have, or now the power phases. Except now he's seeing graphs where there's 20% performance differences because of the motherboard. How are you ignoring that?
Yeah, it's crazy.
I'm baffled by how you could ignore.
It's like a super interesting result.
It's amazing. It's so interesting. I'd be making a video about it like straight away. That would have been my day one review. Like if I could go back and do my day one review again, I would have definitely, I would have done less tests just so I had time to test unlimited versus limited, because it's really interesting and it's extremely valid information for the viewer.
Yeah.
So all of that I find really confusing. So anyway, with my original video, I don't regret anything we said in there, apart from maybe touching on the 4-phase VRM thing, because that just confused a whole heap of ASUS fans, let's say.
Yep.
And it's not really relevant to the topic at hand. The boards are clearly power limited for whatever reason. As I said in my behind the scenes video, I don't really care if all the ASUS boards had a 16-phase VRM. It really doesn't matter.
Yeah, it's because the BIOS is configured that way.
Exactly. So it means you have to be aware of that and go and manually override it.
Yeah. Yeah, so it really is at the point now where we kind of have to have, either, reviews are becoming so much more important for motherboards and for, all of the different components that go into a system, or these companies are going to have to come out and come up with a way to illustrate to people that there is a reason to buy a higher end board because it will give you higher end performance. And for motherboard manufacturers, it makes perfect sense because they want you to buy the most expensive board they offer. So if they come out and they say, they've been lying about VRMs for a while, but let's say they're accurate on this, and they say, our entry-level Z390 board is a 95 watt board, and then you can upgrade to our sort of mid-tier board, and that's when you'll start to see our unlimited boards. Mm-hmm. And you'll have to spend, $100 more to get a board with the VRM that's capable of running it at unlimited.
Yep.
So it's in motherboard manufacturers' best interest to give you this information because it will encourage people to buy more expensive boards.
Yep.
On the other hand, for Intel, it's kind of like they kind of want people to test this stuff wrong, because you can get into a position where people come to our review and they see 9900K performance unlimited and they're like, wow, that looks really good. And then they'll see thermal testing by someone else where it's running at 65 degrees Celsius and using barely any power. So they can kind of get the best of both worlds by people testing this stuff all over the place.
Sort of. I mean, it doesn't... Yeah, I get where you're going with that, but it didn't really work that way for this release because people are just like, why can nobody test this CPU correctly?
Well, that puts it back on us. But for Intel themselves, it's good for them.
The best thing DeBauer could have ever done was... I don't know why he's... Well, I suppose we weren't under NDA, but he just released 20 minutes early, so it's like, oh, whatever. It's not really a review, it's just his own. And his video was amazingly good. But it was so good that he released his 20 minutes early. Because when ours dropped and was showing stupid temperatures, it was like, well, do you want to argue with DeBauer? Be my guest. Good luck with that. I'll just sit back and watch you. And I had a funny thought. I thought, just imagine, because we got our CPU more than a month in advance. Imagine if I had to rush out our review a month in advance and shown 100-degree temperatures at 5 gigahertz on a 240mm closed-loop cooler. Imagine the crap we would have copped.
Yeah, especially when these reviews, like Linus Review, comes out on launch. And
yeah, but even like with no one else to verify that information, we would have just been absolutely hammered for that.
Yeah.
So I'm so glad we waited.
Yeah, I mean, this technology, it's becoming more complicated for people who are building systems to get around with, needing different types of components to adequately get the most out of these components. Like, to get the most out of your CPU, it's not as simple as just buying the cheapest Z390 board anymore.
Nope.
You have to buy a good one.
You've really got to do your research on the motherboards. And
you can't just chuck in a crappy cooler. You have to get a good, at least like an all-in-one 280mm plus or something like that.
Yep.
For Ryzen, you need high-speed memory.
Ryzen high-speed memory.
Yeah,
I mean,
so it's
that's one of those things as well, though, because someone asked that in the Q&A. We will address that. The memory thing doesn't affect productivity workloads that much. Like your blender time's not going to be significantly improved. It improves frame rates massively when not GPU limited. Most people buying Ryzen, well, most people in general buying a gaming computer don't have an RTX 2080 Ti. Most don't have a 1080 Ti.
We can't buy a 2080 Ti anyway.
Apart from that, most people have maybe up to like a GTX 1080. 1070s, your 1070 Ti's, and then obviously...
Your 1060 is your most popular GPU.
1060 RX 580.
Yeah.
So anyone with a GTX 10, at least a 1070 and lower, really don't need to worry about faster memory with Ryzen. Unless they're playing maybe CSGO.
They don't even need to worry about the difference between Ryzen and Intel CPUs.
No, it doesn't really matter. No, they just look... It's all about value for money. So, yeah, I mean, there's that as well. But anyway, I think that's pretty much... I've said everything I need to on that.
The good thing, though, is that with all this situation, we can do more time testing, which makes us more videos.
Yes.
And it makes reviews so much more important than they ever were for these components.
Yeah, and motherboards are worth looking at again.
And on top of that, going to review sites that at least you guys know and trust are going to... Not necessarily... They don't need to get everything right to begin with, but you need to go to reviewers that at least understand what's going on.
Yeah.
So for example, if we had a power limited board, we'd figure out pretty quickly that something's amiss.
It's not rocket science. So you have to be aware of what the multiplier table looks like. What does it do under what load? So you have to be aware of that. The important one to look at is the all core, 47 times all core. Am I achieving that when I'm stressing all cores using Blender? Oh no, it's 4.2. Why is it 4.2? Is it thermals? Is it power? Then you work it out. And it's really that simple. I mean, it's not rocket science. So anyway...
Yeah, but it's just, with reviews getting more important, you also need to make sure you look... I'm not saying definitely need to listen to us every time, but you just need to make sure that when you are looking for reviews, you're looking for someone that is doing it properly and knows what they're talking about.
Most people got it right. I mean...
that's right. Most people did get it right.
The big confusion comes from like Gamers Nexus do their their ambient. They measure the ambient. They remove the ambient. They deduct that from the total temperature, and that's perfectly fine to do. I mean, that's a more technical way of doing it. What I do that. I do the exact same thing. I monitor the ambient, which I generally keep it with the 2122. Because there's two different things there. I'm butchering this explanation, but if you're performance testing, doing what Gamers Nexus does is useless. You have to have the room temperature the same. So when I'm testing VRM thermals, I maintain the exact same room temperature, especially if I'm measuring performance, because you can't have the room 17 degrees for one board and then 22 for the other board, and then deduct those. You take a degree off that one, you add 4 degrees to that, because that doesn't change the performance figure it spat out running cooler.
Yeah.
So that's why I don't worry about that. I have a thing called climate control, and I keep my room at 21 to maximum of 22 degrees. I have a K-type probe sitting on either side of my test system, and I make sure they're both measuring 21 to 22 degrees, and then I run my tests. So if I'm just measuring temperatures, then it doesn't matter. You can, do your delta over ambient, so you can plus or minus and do it that way, or do it how Gamers Nexus does it, which is remove the ambient from the total temperature. All I do is give the total temperature because it confuses people. It's the same reason why we don't do 0.1% frame time stuff unless we notice something, because it just confuses people. It's a information overload. So at Hardware Unbox, we try to keep it simple without showing you how technical we can be, like being technical for the sake of being technical. I'm not accusing Gamers Nexus of doing that.
What we should do is we should, instead of setting our graphs to whatever 0 point we're using, we should set to the actual 0 degrees Kelvin of like minus 273 degrees Celsius, which gives you the actual percentage change of the temperature.
Yeah, our viewers would love that.
They would love having the graph like margins like that thin.
I know. And when people are like, you should do Kelvin, it's like, yeah, our viewers would love that. Like, moving to frame times was a nightmare.
Yeah, it's like, people always mention, like, you got to zero your graphs. It's like, we could zero graphs correctly using 0 Kelvin on temperature, but would you enjoy that?
Well, to be fair, we do zero all our graphs anyway, because that makes sense. I know what you're saying.
Yeah, I'm saying, like, you can manipulate any data you want to have a 0 point at whatever point you want. So...
I just saw a comment from Sal Kagan. He's always trying to stir shit up. I'm just kidding. Yeah, so that's that. But the reason I show the full temperature is because it doesn't confuse people. And clearly what Gamers Nexus do, which is preferred by their viewers, and I understand completely why they do it, is a better approach. It's a more technical approach. But then you see guys on Reddit going, Hardware Unbox screwed up. They got 85. Gamers Nexus got 65. It's like, yeah, you have to add 20 degrees.
Yeah, you have to read the chart.
Well,
you have to, that important text at the top? That actually tells you a lot about what's going on.
People always say, oh, you guys need to report the ambient. I'm like, the second line under the title in the graph says ambient temperature between 21 and 22 degrees.
There are so many people that don't read those lines. And it's like, it's crucial information. Just read it. Please read it.
Yeah, I know. They just see the temperature. They probably don't even read the title. There's so many more things as well. It's like, what did they use to stress test? And this is saying, the guys are saying, oh, Jay's only getting low 80s. Jay's reporting low 80 degree temperatures. Okay. What did he use to test? How long did he test
this is a very important point, because in a CPU, it's not like...
I use Blender 1 hour.
Yeah, it's not like you run a CPU at 100% and it's using 100% of all the components in the CPU.
Depending on the workload.
Yeah, so the workload... For example, AVX uses more of the CPU. It actually, there's things built into the CPU that are used when you use AVX. Mm-hmm. It literally is working the CPU harder. Mm-hmm. Except when you look at your performance monitor, it still says you're running at 100%. You could be running a non-AVX workload and an AVX workload, both at 100% utilization, but because the AVX instructions are much more complex for the CPU, literally is working harder. Uses more power, it'll run hotter.
It comes back. Sorry to interrupt. I was going to say, it comes back to the same reason why reporting CPU utilization in games.
Yeah, it's.
But sorry, continue.
Yeah, it's basically. You have to stress when you're stress testing. It's important to know what application you're using, because you could stress test in a very low intensity application that is running. It's so when the CPU utilization is measured, it's basically measuring how much of the time are there instructions that the CPU is having to do. But it tells you absolutely nothing about what those instructions actually make the CPU do. So if you want to stress test it the most intensively, you need to make sure that all those instructions that are being sent in 100% utilization are all high intensity. Whereas you could run 100% and make it do piss easy stuff.
And that's why what you're saying, it's so important that you use a real world workload. I'm struggling with words. Because if you use Prime 95 to test power consumption and thermals, cool. You've got power consumption and thermals. The 2700X might use more or less power than the 9900K. Cool. Is it more efficient? I don't know. If you run Blender and you say, okay, the 2700X is using 10% less power than the 9900K. Cool. Now I'm looking at the performance chart for that test, but it was 10% faster.
Yeah.
Oh, well, it's a lot more efficient than... Well, that CPU is a lot less efficient than what you thought based. So it's really important to base your power testing on an actual benchmark.
Yeah, this is where power virus... Like, people always mention, did you test with a power virus?
Yeah.
A power virus is basically what I was talking about before, where it's 100% utilization. It's using high intensity instructions that stress out the CPU a lot, but it also has no real world application.
Yeah, unless you can, at the very least, if you can benchmark it under those exact same conditions and see how they differ in terms of performance, then you've got some sort of rough guide there.
Yeah, so like Fermark for GPUs is like that. There's no point running that. Like
that's right. Yeah.
What is it doing? And like Prime 95 sort of, because some people do actually use a CPU to crunch what's the highest prime number in the world, that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But it's more your blenders, more your
Blender's good.
H265 encoding in particular, because that uses AVX and AVX. I mean, AVX does more heavily skew things to Intel because Intel is more efficient.
But it also
it's also a real world test.
Yeah,
so.
but it also skews the performance in their favor.
Yeah.
So you can still get an efficiency rating.
Yeah, that's true.
So
it's obviously important to also test, your non-AVX but still intensive workloads, because a lot of applications don't use AVX, some do.
Yeah, well, that's one thing you could show. You could show power.
You can show as many as you want.
Yeah, you could show but how do you show temperatures in games? Because there's a game that uses AVX.
Well, games is a very dodgy metric.
It is a very dodgy metric. Like using games to measure that kind of stuff, because it's just all over the place.
It's like that thing where people mention about like, oh, this game's running at 100% CPU utilization, performance is going to be bad. And it's like...
Yeah, I know.
That doesn't tell you anything about how badly it's going to
We've explained how difficult that is to... that's why we don't report that as a metric, despite people screaming that we do. And then, circling back a little bit with temperatures to OC 3D TV, they were claiming they weren't stress testing. They were using... what was it? It was OCCT or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was like a Prime 95 type stress test, and they were using a workload that doesn't use AVX. And he was saying, that's why I'm getting 65 degrees, not 85, like what these other guys are doing. Except he said 100 for some reason. Anyway, it doesn't matter. I don't know why he hasn't run Blender. I mean, he benchmarks a 30-second Blender pass. Just get an hour-long workload. Anyway, I did the test he tests. It shaved 4 degrees off my 85 degrees. So it ran at 81. Yeah. Not 65. 65 degrees is a laughably absurd low temperature for the 9900K. Like, you never...
It fails the common sense test.
You get it to that temperature on 4 cores, let alone your 8. But anyway... should not really... Now, when I revisit the 9900K, I don't think I don't really like using the Power Virus stuff, because if I had have only used Power Virus type applications for my review, then I could understand people being upset about the high temperatures, because it's not representative of real world workloads. I would like to test with a few different things, like encoding with Premiere, Handbrake. So I'll probably include 3 or 4 different temperature tests. But the main thing I want to focus on is this 95 watt versus unlimited. And I want to compare them in short burst workloads, your Cinebenches and stuff like that. And then your long workloads like Blender and Handbrake and all that sort of stuff. And just see how much they differ. I think that'd be a really cool review, a really good way to look at it. So that's what I'll be doing. You guys have PC Per Ryan Shrout moved to Intel on your topic list. Not really. Did you hear about that news?
Yeah, I did.
Yeah.
Yeah, people do that all the time.
Yeah.
Whatever. Seems like you had a good career move opportunity.
Yeah. Well,
why wouldn't you do that?
They've been copping a lot of flack on the tech channel this year. Maybe he just got sick of it, and he's like, "Well, this is a..."
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know his reasons. I could only speculate. But if you could probably fall out of love with doing this job. I personally love it. Like, Intel have offered me jobs before to work for Intel Australia at reasonable starting wages. I've had a few different companies over the years offer me jobs, and I've said no, because I love working for myself and doing whatever the hell I want, doing whatever testing interests me. And same reason why you haven't gone and done something in engineering. I don't really want to work for a corporation, but maybe he fell out of love with doing this. He wasn't enjoying the review process anymore.
Or it's just a good opportunity to do something different. Like, you don't necessarily have to fall out of love with doing a job to move into some other field. It could just be like, well, I mean, it's too good of an opportunity to pass up. So
yeah, but if they offered me $1 million a year to do a corporate job where I'm flying all around the place, I'd be like, I'm pretty good.
Well, yeah.
Well, I put it this way: when they offered me a job, it was twice the money I was making at the time, and I was like, don't want to do that. Because for me, well, that's why I live in the country, though. So I'm all about, me and my wife are very much about comfortable lifestyle, not having to worry about money, and just enjoying life that way without the stress and all that sort of stuff. So I'm very much country in that sense. I like, we got a small mortgage to start off with, and money's not a problem. Because I wanted to keep doing TechSpot, which doesn't pay super well, as you might imagine. I'm freelance writing for TechSpot. Tim knows exactly what I'm talking about.
Oh, yeah.
But that paid the bills for me. Because, you buy a block. I've got 5 acres of land. If you bought 1 acre, half an hour from the city, you'd be looking at over $500,000, thereabouts.
Half an hour from the city for 5 acres.
No, 1.
For 1 acre.
Yeah, the outer suburbs. It'd be insane money, is what I'm getting at.
500k. That's well under. Massively under.
Yeah, well, maybe a bit further, maybe an hour. But my point is,
250 squares would cost you a fortune.
Yeah, it'd be so expensive. Whereas it's it'd be about 20 times cheaper out in the country. But I also like the country because I don't like traffic.
Yeah.
I don't like noise. I'm an old man, all right?
Yeah, you are.
So anyway, he probably did that because he wanted to. And he had his reasons.
Exactly.
So... people...
Same as when Scott Wasson moved from Tech Report to AMD. Yeah. People when Anand moved to work at Apple.
Yeah, see, I would personally never do it. There's almost no amount of money they could offer me. And if they offered me just an absurd, insane, life-changing amount of money, I'd go do it for a year.
Yeah.
And retire.
I mean, I think as well, a lot of people who are in this industry also would be very interested in helping make these products better. So for some people, that would be a pull into coming out of doing reviews and going into, either testing the products in-house or in the design process or whatever. So, people have expertise that's relevant for the design process of these products. So
I'm a bit like Steve from Gamers Nexus. I help making them better by shredding them to pieces.
Yeah, pretty much. But yeah, so... Yeah, no desire here to make those sort of changes, but...
Nesta says, I'm jealous of your mower, Steve. Yeah, I do love my mower.
Yeah.
That's my thinking machine. I jump on the mower for 2 hours, and I do so much thinking on the mower. I think of really good video ideas and things, and...
Yeah.
Yeah. I clear my head by thinking about more work.
So yeah, there's probably a few more things that we'll cover in the Q&A.
How long have we been going for?
57 minutes.
Okay, that's pretty good. Well, I think we've covered everything. I don't really want to bore the guys with the PT report thing or how Linus handled that. We've covered that really. Don't really need to get into that too much. I think you guys understand why I was disappointed with Linus's thing. If you have any questions about that, ask them and I'll answer them. But I'm just assuming at this point you guys are pretty well up to speed on that one.
And again, we don't make these videos to make YouTube drama, even though we know YouTube drama gets mega views. If we wanted to get the mega views, we'd either do GamerMeld. Is that channel's name of just fake news? So we could do rumors and we could get mega views, or we could do YouTube drama and get mega views. But
yeah,
it's we're not in these to make these videos to go out and slam Linus to make YouTube drama that then gets us mega views. We're interested in making sure that you guys know why Linus's testing was different to ours, why the PT Labs report is so dodgy, to make sure that you're not getting, false information out of these things.
Well, there was multiple reasons for the PT Labs thing. Just quickly, it was what Tim just said. It was stopping Intel from trying to do it more and make it the norm. And because then if Intel starts doing a lot, then AMD kind of has to do it. They get dragged into that at some point.
If it's shown to be acceptable, then it makes that a standard that everyone can
follow. They'll if they don't get pulled up, they'll jump on board, and before you know it, you're getting heaps of fake benchmarks before a product release, and you're seeing longer and longer pre-order periods, and it just all goes to crap. So, yeah, I just didn't appreciate the way Linus said we were making a mountain out of a molehill, and it's not a big deal. This sort of thing happens all the time. He's been around forever and a day. He's seen it all. This isn't new. We're just making a big drama out of nothing. What's the big deal, guys? And he either didn't fully understand or didn't care or whatever. But it's really not cool releasing fake benchmarks that you push on unsuspecting media that don't know any better. that say that the 9900K is up to 50% faster for games.
Yeah, and
than
let's
the
be honest, like
37RX.
it's perfectly fine when mainstream media doesn't have the same expertise and knowledge of these products that your enthusiast channels do.
Yeah, they don't deserve hate or
They're
getting
not-
ripped apart. They're just
It's not their core audience. Their core audience is more your casual people, and that's why those sites exist. It's like, I know The Verge copped like a lot of flack for their PC building video because they went outside the expertise of their what they're known for. But if they had stuck to the stuff that they're known for, they honestly do a fairly good job of covering the industry, like in terms of industry news, covering launches.
I mean, yeah.
The review side probably could do with a bit of work, but in terms of, you know, what is a company doing a dodgy thing that's not necessarily in our realm, but is more in the general.
This is actually, you just,
They do a good job of that.
yeah, you sparked a little thought with me. I've got a...
Yeah.
So, and I'll start with the Verge example. So with the Verge thing, they did a video. It was garbage. Okay. It happens.
Yeah.
Pull the video down after you get some backlash and bad feedback. Look at what the feedback was. Look at what your mistakes were. Maybe speak to an expert in the field and say, is this really that bad, or were these just fanboys? Or
Yeah, exactly. It's hard. It is genuinely hard to filter out the abusive, you
Yeah.
know, just
well, if
shit
you read
throwing
if you
comments.
read the comments in my video addressing Linus and OC3D TV's benchmarks, I unfairly abused them, called them out, berated them when I was saying they did nothing wrong. Like, the words coming out of my mouth multiple times were, guys, I want to be clear, they did nothing wrong. And yet I was abusing them, according to a lot of people that were probably trying to cause drama. So anyway, getting back to that, they put out a ridiculously funny meme-filled video that was bad. Instead of, you know, stamping about and going, no, screw you guys, and giving everyone the middle finger and saying, we're right, get stuffed, the PC works, they probably should have gone, okay, there's clearly a problem here. Let's unlist this video for now, or make it private, and sort out what's going on. And then, if they had have come up with, like, even a week later, preferably days later, had I come back and remade the exact same video without the mistakes, everyone would have been like, yeah, okay, cool.
Yep.
That would have been the end of it. Except they handled it the wrong way. I wasn't happy about how the poor young guy that did the video got hammered and was personally attacked and chased wherever he went online. It's like, hammer the Verge, but don't go after the...
Yeah, I mean, we mentioned that, I think, before.
Yeah.
It's like, they have an editorial team that should have picked this up.
Yeah, I mean, there was just some guy that was doing it, and he clearly
Yeah.
didn't know what he was doing.
But again, like, that was their issue because they went outside the scope that their site normally covers. And if they had stuck to the things that they are good at doing, and it's not like, again, it's not like their whole site just does absolute terrible work.
Yeah.
They do plenty of good stuff in the areas that they are known for, and they have experienced reporters who have industry contacts that can cover the things that they're interested in.
Yeah.
Like, we wouldn't go and comment on, say, like, LG CEO doing something dodgy because, like,
Well, it's like
not
when
really
we...
in our
Well,
expertise.
it's like when we touched on the Spectre and Meltdown vulnerabilities. We said, look, guys, we're not security experts.
Yeah, leave that to the security guys.
But we like benchmarking. So we're
Yeah.
benchmarking the impacts of these, and we're not giving you the full story. That's our
Yeah.
disclaimer. So go research that. But I'm not saying they can't branch out into PC building if they want to do that. You've got to start somewhere.
Yeah.
Sure, they've got the resources and whatnot to bring in someone who's like a bloody expert. And
They do.
Does cable management in their sleep. Anyway, so what I'm getting at there is it's okay to make mistakes. It's how you go about addressing them. Tim and I are definitely at some point going to screw something up.
I'm sure we probably have in the past for sure.
Hopefully not really embarrassing. Like, hopefully it's not something that's really dumb, but it might be. Okay? If we do something that's really dumb, or we make any kind of mistake, like when the 9900K reviews went live, if we had have tested with the 95 watt power board and said the thing runs at 55 degrees while everyone else is saying 85, we would have gone, ooh, okay, let's pull that video or make some sort of disclaimer and redo it ASAP to solve the problem. So you're going to make mistakes. That just happens. So we're never, if anyone who makes a mistake, we're not calling them out and going, haha, they're dumb, we're smarter, they made a mistake. And I gave OC3D TV an out. I just think he doesn't understand what's going on. Because he could have just gone, oh, it's the ASUS BIOS. It was limiting it. We didn't have much time. My bad.
Nothing comes of admitting him. Like, no one is going to be like, geez, you know, let's just burn OC3D to the ground because they made a mistake in their testing. Everyone makes mistakes. It's how you approach your response to the mistakes, how you go about it in the future, make sure you learn. That's how you should go about mistakes. And it's just, yeah, it's like, and especially like if someone makes a mistake on a YouTube channel or on a publication, we're not going to make a video about, and like some people request us to do these sort of things.
Some people.
Lots of people. But
Yeah.
like we don't want to make a video where we're just calling out their mistakes, because that adds absolutely nothing to the discussion. In the case of the Verge video, it was like, if we had made a video at the point that we made it, it literally would have just been attacking that guy. It's like, it wouldn't have added anything to the discussion.
My idea, if we were, because we had a lot of requests. My idea was to do the video again, like get all the components they did, do it in the exact same format, but just say the right things and do the right things, and like not even reference them, just like do a parody of their video by doing it correctly.
Yeah, that's right. It's like,
that would have been pretty funny, I thought.
if we ever do a take on someone's mistake, it's going to be so that it's educating you guys on like what went wrong.
Or them.
Or educating them. What went wrong? You know, how do you do this properly? What are the right ways to go about it? And we're going to probably make sure that we've done it right too. Otherwise, that'd be embarrassing. But I think we both agree on this, that YouTube drama is boring. It's like, it sucks if you're just calling people out and being like, you know, Linus did a crap job. Let's have a hit piece on him. Look at all these things he's done wrong. It's boring. You should be trying to make videos for your viewers, not making videos to slam another creator.
Yeah.
It's all about educating and making sure that everyone in the whole community is learning and getting better and doing these things properly, so that their audience that might not necessarily, you know, correlate with ours is going to get better information the next time that channel makes a video. It's not about going out and saying, these guys are terrible, don't watch them, they're awful, they make terrible content. That doesn't add anything.
Yeah, and the irony, or, well, let's just say the YouTubers that jumped on the hate train initially, I won't name anyone, but I'm sure you guys are aware of the guys, they're sort of in our circle. They've made some mistakes. They've blown things up with power supplies by using the wrong cables. They've cut heat pipes and ruined coolers and not understood why the cooler doesn't work anymore when you cut a hole in a heat pipe. They've done dumb things, and they've copped flack for it. So if you do a dumb thing and you cop flack for it, you know what that feels like. You've done a dumb thing, you've owned up to it. Anyway, so that's the thing with The Verge. Sadly admit though that I thought the Lyle video was funny. That was hilarious.
Yeah.
So the video done by Bitwit, Kyle over there, or his brother Lyle, that was hilarious. I don't have any problem with that kind of content. That was just, he wasn't sitting there going, this guy's an idiot. He was adding humor to it. That was enjoyable.
He's making light of the issue.
He's making light of the issue. That was perfectly fine. That was ridiculously funny. He nailed that big time. So yeah, it was just unfair the way the guy that did the video got treated. That's what we thought, so we didn't want to pile on. But yeah, if we were going to do something, we were just going to show this is how it should be done. And I would have liked them to have given that guy a chance to redo it. But then people are abusing him, saying he didn't handle it well and he brought race into it. And people, it's like, look, he's a young guy getting, like, people don't seem, they do not understand what it's like putting themselves in our position. And I'm not saying boohoo, poor us, because I've been doing this job for nearly 20 years. It's laughable at this point when we get attacked. But if we did make a genuine mistake and we were getting attacked, that wouldn't be that nice, because we would know that we'd made a mistake and we were trying to correct it. But the fact that this young guy, he's not going to take it well. He's not going to go, okay. He's not going to be super mature and go, okay, internet. Everyone abusing me and saying all these inappropriate things. You're right. I made a few small mistakes. I called cable ties tweezers. I'm going to redo the video. Like, of course he's going to get his back up and be defensive and tell you all, you know what.
Yeah, especially when, like, you can go on YouTube comments and you might find, like, a few constructive comments. And on that Verge video, there were a few genuinely constructive comments pointing out the issues and being like, these are the things that you didn't get right. But you get those comments plus a million other comments. Like, the ratio between the constructive comments to the just, like, you're an idiot comments is like, it's disproportionate massively. So when you see in your comment section, you're seeing the feedback on what you've made, and you just see, you're an idiot, you've done this wrong, you're terrible, you know, you should die, all that sort of thing. It doesn't put you in a mindset where you're going to be like, guys, I made a mistake.
Exactly.
It's going to be like, oh my God, I'm going to have to get off the internet. Or I'm going to like have to be like, these are just haters and trolls and like.
Especially if you're a young, inexperienced guy. And the human brain or the how we're hardwired to acknowledge criticism over positive stuff, because basically the way it works is, I believe, my understanding of it is, criticism or sorry, not criticism, negative stuff can potentially kill you. Whereas positive stuff's just nice. Makes you, you know, so that's why you'll always focus on negative things, because they have potentially really negative possibilities. So you can read 1,000 nice comments and then you get a couple of, 1, 2, 3 really negative ones. You'll focus on that. So as you do this job more and you become more experienced, you learn not to focus on those. You just do what Tim does and laugh out loud.
Most of the negative comments are just hilarious.
Yeah.
Often because it's a lot of negative comments that we get are based on people having a misconception that they think is like super accurate. And they think that like they have the most accurate information. So then they're like, oh, you've done this wrong. And it's like, sure, we could make a mistake, but we're fairly sure that we haven't in most of the cases where that happens. So,
well, yeah, when we have a day one reviews are the worst for me. And it hasn't got anything to do with them being rushed, though that attributes to this. I hate them. I sweat when a day one review goes live.
Yeah, there's a lot of anxiety about it, yeah.
Especially with Harbour Unboxed as we keep getting bigger. I mean, TechSpot's massive anyway. But, like, you've got to hope everything's in order and you haven't made any really dumb mistakes. Because people, it's like you're only as good as your last videos, or it should be the saying. All your credibility seems to be on the line with every single day one release. And you screw something up. And that's why I wanted to say with the Linus and the OC 3D TV stuff that they were copying a lot of flack saying they screwed up, and also saying, well, maybe they didn't. Doesn't look like they did to me. But yeah, it's really nerve-wracking when I'm always confident in the results we put out there. I wouldn't put them out there. But even so, a lot of the time I don't have, like, for the 9900K, I had no one. Like, Brian didn't get his stuff in time, or he was messing around with it, having problems. Paul from Paul's Hardware, who I spoke to, he was having weird thermal issues and didn't have any useful information for me. Kev from Tech Showdown didn't get one. And I had Jared, good old Jared from Jared's Tech. And he confirmed my results. And then Brian did later, close to release. But Jared from Jared's Tech, a few days beforehand, said, man, I am seeing insane thermals on a closed loop cooler.
Yep.
And I said, what's your voltages? What's your frequency? And his all matched mine. I'm like, okay, well, that's nice to know that someone else is seeing what I'm seeing. And then, like I said, DeBauer, I'm sitting there thinking, oh man, I'm reporting some ridiculously bad temperatures.
Yeah.
And I made I made that thumbnail, which I knew was going to stir up the Intel fanboys. And then when DeBauer put out his video 20 minutes beforehand, I jumped through it, found his thermals. I was like, oh, yes. That is good to see. I don't have to pull my... Because if he had reported like 65 degrees like what OC 3D TV did, I would have been freaking out. And I would have been like, do I have to pull my video? Yep. Or what's going on? Has he done something wrong?
I think as well, like, the leniency that we give reviewers is massively different to the leniency that we give companies.
Oh, yeah.
Because, as you might have noticed, we as poorly as some people have done their reviews, it's nowhere near in the same category as the PT report.
No.
Even if the PT report did the exact same things as the reviewers did, because it's coming from a corporation who definitely knows everything about their product, and this is effectively because PT is done through Intel, that it's just so much worse. So we are more than happy to come out and, slam Intel into the dirt for doing dodgy stuff and telling them everything they've done wrong and this is bad and terrible and they should go away and die. But it's very different for reviewers, and they don't deserve the same treatment for making a few mistakes in their testing. Unless, of course, they're doing it maliciously, which is very unlikely.
Very unlikely. Yeah, I mean, there's a big difference between getting paid to do a job and following guidelines to being an independent reviewer.
I mean, Sal says here, the Linus thing is as bad as PT. They asked Intel, and Intel said, yep, those are good numbers. what are Intel going to say
See,
when you provide those numbers?
Well,
to
that
them?
doesn't matter. Intel isn't a factor in this. I completely disagree with Sal on that one.
Yeah, so do I, because I'm saying, like, you go to Intel with results that seem very favorable to them. What are they going to say? They're going to be like, "That's good. Please
But
publish
it's not.
that."
It's not favorable to them though. That's the crazy thing. Look, I would be 100% on Sal's side on that one. Go, yep, you're absolutely right, mate. That they've been paid off, or there's something dodgy. They're not above board. But they used that same method for all their testing.
Yeah,
if
so it's a mistake. It's not malicious.
That's right. If they had have tested 95 watt power limit for power and thermals, and then tested all the benchmarks with unlimited, I would have taken them to task, destroyed them in my video.
Yeah, because it's the same with company. Anytime a company produces benchmarks that are wrong, it's malicious. It's damaging to consumers. A benchmark person like us getting something wrong isn't in the same category.
Yeah, but you have to get it wrong in the sense that it comes back to the common sense test a bit. Like, it has to make sense that, okay, you got it wrong by doing that. Like, it was... someone asked, what have we got wrong before? And I do want to touch on that because I have a couple of stories. But it has to make sense. If you go, I accidentally tested thermals and power in a manner that really favors Intel, but then did the benchmarking in a manner that really favors Intel, that's a pretty tough sell. Like, that's not a good way to stuff up.
Yeah, I mean, Sal's saying stuff like, they used Intel telling them that their testing was right as an excuse for why everyone else is wrong. And again, it's like...
But everyone else can be wrong. Because...
Yeah, and like, Intel is giving Linus accurate information. They're saying, you did test in the specifications for our product, and the way you tested delivered results that are accurate for the way you did it. And it's like...
I get
if you didn't know any better to why your results weren't aligning with other people, then Intel has just gone, well, you did actually test in spec, so that's valid.
Yeah.
And the testing is valid.
The testing is valid. Look, if you get a board with I've proved it. If you get a board with a 95 watt power limit and you test thermals, power, and benchmarks, you get the same results they got. Yeah, their benchmarking methods aren't great. They take the first run off Cinebench, R15. That's not good. But that's not uncommon. A lot of reviewers, like Kev from Tech Showdown, he reports the highest score he gets off multiple runs. And I'm like, you should take the average. He's like, I like to do the highest because people get annoyed when... He's worried about people saying, my overclock system gets this. Why are you getting that? And I just say to people, I'd take a 6-run average. You're taking the best. It's a completely different way of getting the metric. I take a 6-run average every time we Cinebench, which is why my results are almost always a little bit lower than others. Because it's too much of a short test. But Linus tested within the spec and they used the same method for all of it. And if I was Intel, I would have been like, hang on. The 9900K is meant to be faster than the 8700K in every game. It's impossible for it to be slower because it's clocked higher under every condition. It's clocked higher and has 2 more cores. So even if you disable those 2 cores, it can't lose to the 8700K. It's physically impossible. So straight away, they should have been like, well, you're power limiting the CPU. We want to see more performance. So I don't get it. Like, they're not being dodgy in that sense. They're not...
No, and defending their own data when they've tested correctly within the spec is not dodgy.
Saying they have the only correct data and everyone else tested out of spec.
That's just making a mistake.
But that's why
or not understanding the topic fully.
Yeah,
and there's a lot of confusion. It's like, it's not that...
But that's why I want to do ours again.
I think the thing that... Sal's bringing up is that I don't think Linus is maliciously saying that everyone else's data is out of spec and that theirs is correct.
I think they stand by.
They don't fully understand the situation.
That's right.
It's different to being malicious. Malicious would be knowing full well that everyone else's data is also accurate, but then going and saying that they're the only correct testing.
Yeah,
which is not what I believe is happening.
And I wouldn't say Linus is dumb. But if he watched our video, he'd probably be like, okay. That's what's going on.
Yeah, exactly. And especially so close to his launch. And that brings us back to what we were saying before. So close to the launch, it's really difficult to know whether you're testing it correctly or not.
Yeah, so they're saying Anthony said all the other reviewers did overclock. Look, it's the same problem we have with Tiny Tom Logan, from OC 3D TV, Anthony from Linus Tech Tips, and Tom don't know what we're talking about as far as I can tell. They don't know this is a thing.
Yeah.
They haven't understood. That's what I said at the start.
Yeah, and that's why that's why it's different to the PT report, because with the PT report, Intel gets the information. They know exactly what everything should be because they are literally making these CPUs.
Yeah.
And they can check it off and be like, yeah, we know what's going on here, but we're going to check it all off. We know that these are wrong, but they're favorable to us anyway. And because the methodology was published, it's not...
I argue that they're not favorable, to be honest with you. I don't... People don't... Look, the common gamer, the average person, your normie, that's looking at a Linus Tech Tip video, couldn't give two rats about power consumption. They just skip that. That's boring to me. Don't care.
Yeah.
Thermals, I reckon most people don't pay any attention either. They want to know how many frames they get in games, and that's pretty much it for most of their viewers. Some might be like, how does Premiere work or something like that? How fast does it encode? So I have a totally different opinion on that. Sal says, Tom legitimately doesn't understand. I'd agree. Linus doesn't care. I'd also agree. And he said that makes it worse. Linus doesn't care because they've tested within spec. They haven't done anything wrong. They haven't done it technically correct either.
But the thing that with this is right. Say Linus got a board, that the exact board that we use that isn't limited out of the box, and they didn't mess around with the BIOS settings, and they got the numbers that we were getting, they still would have published it. They just would have had results that were more in line with what we were seeing with unlimited, as opposed to more on the limited.
That's right. If they were given the MSI Godlike, they would have published the same results I got.
Yeah, so
it's as simple as that.
In that sense, that's why it's not the same as the PT report, and doesn't deserve the same level of treatment. Even if they think that they've done everything right, and even if they've seen other people's testing and they're calling it overclocking or whatever, it's just not knowing what's going on.
Yeah, and look, I see where Styles going with this. He said if you're getting the data you're getting, then you're overclocked, and Anthony knows better. This is very much a Verge situation once again. Anthony, the poor guy, has sat there. To his knowledge, he's done an excellent job.
And he's asked Intel, and they've said it's correct because it is.
But he's put in the time. He's been paid, and this. It's a bit different. If I screw up, I'm only letting myself down and you guys. I have no higher power that I answer to. Okay, maybe I've let Team Harbor unbox down.
I'll be devastated. I'll be crying to myself.
But sleep. I'm not getting paid by a higher power, whereas Anthony's getting paid by Linus. And if he screws up, it looks really bad for him, and it makes Linus look bad. And Linus is employing people and paying them a good wage so they don't make him look bad and give him bad information. So he's gone and done the testing. He's put in the time and effort, and as far as he's concerned, he's done his job well. So when guys start attacking him and he goes, well, hang on, Intel, have I done something wrong? Are you happy with the results? Yep, all looks fine to us. Screw you guys. I got it right. You can all go jump off a bridge.
Yeah, I mean, it would have been bad if he got results. He's asked Intel if it was correct. Intel says yes, but actually they weren't running within the spec. So then Intel is basically lying because then it would make the results look good for them. But it's not, because it's the whole confusion about there being a range of specs that you can test a processor in. So
yeah, I mean, I get what Sal's saying.
And again, Linus should have you can fact check as much as you want before a release, but some things you just don't know, and some things you can't find out.
This isn't even an agree to disagree situation. This is I agree with you, but I also disagree. Yeah. It's like, I get where you're coming from. And yeah, I agree to a point. Anyway, I mean, I don't know much more we can say. They tested within spec. They just tested a different spec to us. And that's what I said in my video. The spec is too broad now, which is why I want to do an updated 9900K review testing the 95 watt limit and then unlimited.
Yeah. And to be fair, we're only now figuring out what's going on.
Yeah.
The launch was like last week.
Yeah.
So when Linus makes this video and you start defending everything, it's still in that grey area where people don't actually really know what's going on. So to say that, it's all bad that Linus is coming out and standing up for himself, defending his results, that's a bad thing. It's like, he genuinely wouldn't have known. Like, genuinely would not have all the information on the table to figure out what is going on. And sure, you could educate yourself and figure out what's going on, look into it, do an in-depth look into it. But if you're spending 5 minutes looking at it and you don't really understand power limits, you don't really understand, or you're not really familiar in depth with these things, then of course everything's going to look fine.
Well, if you go back to the TechSpot days where I didn't do that much content, I'm producing about 10 times more content than I ever have done doing this job. TechSpot, we basically covered the major stuff and then we just did case reviews and things in between. I didn't do nearly this much CPU testing or GPU testing for that matter. And we would have tested the 8700K and we would have done so on a high-end motherboard, and then we would have tested all the other locked CPUs like your 8400 on the same motherboard, but we would have lowered the memory speed to be within spec. And we would have used the same motherboard and be done with it, because that's just how a lot of tech sites work. And, you know, I'm not getting paid tons and tons of money to spend weeks on end testing every possible combination, which is why this is so good, this YouTube channel. So if I had have tested the 8700K on a high-end motherboard, I would have gone, there's the results, all the processors trickle down, all look right, done. Move on, 9900K rocks up, and hopefully you were tested on a high-end motherboard. However, if you test on a low-end motherboard, you're completely oblivious to these problems. You just assume that it works the same on all motherboards, because like I said, when you used to do your motherboard roundups, every motherboard had the same result, and that is what I would have been assuming.
Yeah, and like Sal also says, you know, we instantly knew he was power limited. And that's for a number of reasons. Firstly, when you're doing a review on NDA, before an NDA comes out, as Steve's already mentioned, we have very limited data we can match up to other people. So when a review gets published, you can go and check as many reviews as you want and have all the data in front of you, compare them all and go, well, we've tested with no power limits, they've tested with a limit because their results are lower. That's very easy to do, but when you're making the content in the lead up, it's much, much harder to find out those issues when you can't compare it to other people. So that's the first thing. And the second thing is, yeah, while we might be able to figure out these things very quickly, you also have to understand that other people don't necessarily have that expertise. And it's not a bad thing that they don't have the expertise at that exact moment. It's all about a learning process, and making mistakes is fine. So sure, you could have someone who's more knowledgeable about power limits, but Linus's channel isn't the same as our channel with a more consumer sort of general audience.
Yeah.
There's no real need for someone to have a super in-depth knowledge of all these different things of how an Intel CPU works.
Yeah, so
there's a whole range of things there that mean that it's not a terrible thing that Linus has done. And sure, he could have done stuff better, but
it's a mainstream channel that isn't technical. I mean,
yeah,
you're going to have shortcomings there. And yeah, I agree, but also disagree a bit with Sal there. Sal's saying the OC 3D test, OC 3D tested 15 boards, and they had refuting data before the review went live. I need to get a laptop with a bigger screen. Seriously, the text is tiny.
You have bad eyesight.
So he had data that my eyesight's fine, thank you. He had data that proved himself wrong before all this went live. Yeah, so I totally agree with you. I make no excuses for OC 3D TV. They should have known better. They'd already done the testing. Like I said, I don't know how you can see a 20% difference in performance between motherboards and not bat an eyelid to that and go, what the hell is going on here? And then publish that. I don't know. I can't explain what the hell Tom's done or what he's thinking. It makes no sense to me. I can't even begin to explain it.
Yeah, and I think Valkyries makes a good point here as well. You know, Linus might know, and he might know all these PL2 things, but, you know, he isn't doing day-to-day benchmarking anymore. He's running a company.
Yeah.
It's not his job to micromanage his employees to make sure that they're doing everything right. And he doesn't necessarily need to, you know, look really in-depth at the content that other people are making.
He's the CEO of a company.
Yeah. The CEO's job is not to completely check over everything and make sure that everything looks good and go back and do all the research himself.
In a more traditional workplace, Linus would be a guy you never see or hear from, really.
Yeah.
He might come out at the...
You have your head of benchmarking, and then you have your benchmarking goons.
And then you have the low-level guy that presents it. But YouTube works completely different. And so I don't know how it works over at Linus Tech Tips, but I imagine Linus is a very busy guy. He walks in the morning. He does the usual managing of the staff things, the goings-on of the business. Then he walks into the set. They have the script up on the teleprompter. He goes over the notes. They have everything. He reads off the teleprompter, does his bit, And that's it. He walks away and never sees it again. He told me that at Computex when I met him briefly, not last year, the year before. He's like,
Yeah.
I walk in, go bang, 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 film it, walk away. He goes, I never even watch the videos. Which is funny because he says he reads all the comments, but he obviously has someone reading that, and if it's bad or whatever and they have to come back, then he gets involved that way.
And that's exactly how his company should be working.
Yeah, well, it's efficient.
At the scale that he's got his
it's
company
efficient.
to.
He walks in, reads his lines off the teleprompter because he's the face of the Linus Media Group, and then he walks away. It gets edited by someone else, and they do the thing. That bird's going to town, isn't it?
Yeah.
Is that a seagull?
But I also think like it's bad to heavily criticize people for not knowing things, because like it's kind of like you're not encourage. Like the whole point is you have to encourage people to learn, and like if you're just going to slam someone heavily for not knowing stuff, it doesn't make it a healthy environment to continue to learn about these things. If you get something slightly wrong and you're going to get absolutely destroyed online for it, it doesn't present an environment where you're really encouraged to learn from your mistakes, and you're encouraged to publicly talk about mistakes.
And that's why
it's a bad environment.
People are like, oh, you know, we had more respect for Harbour Unboxed, you guys, you know, this and that, and it's been total letdown that you've messed this up, and I don't know if we can ever trust you again. It's like, wow, okay. Well, that makes it hard to do anything new, or, you know, and so I 100% agree with that, and that's why I was a bit annoyed with Tom's response. I thought his response was mostly okay, but he didn't really... Like, I don't think he said anything bad or made the situation worse. And he didn't attack us in any way. But he didn't address anything. And I don't know how he can be publishing the results that he's publishing and then have someone like me point out that, hey, this problem exists. And then not have him go, well,
I think
that makes sense.
People think that sometimes can confuse constructive criticism for personal attacks, which makes it, depending on the person that you are receiving that sort of feedback, makes it difficult to sort of, you know, is it bird mating season or something?
It's a crow.
They are going crazy.
Hang on.
There.
Oh, we should quickly have a couple of... Actually, I want to quickly tell about a mistake we made.
Yep.
Oh,
I want to get to Nando soon.
Have you ever made a mistake before?
I'm sure I've made plenty of mistakes.
1 second.
So, yeah, I mean, it's kind of like as well, like, with the display testing that I was doing recently, I think Steve's going to shoot the bird or something. With the display testing that I've been doing recently with response times and input lag, it's another one of those things where, like, I didn't really have much information to go off on to create those tests. I didn't have much... There's not many people doing the testing, so it's hard to make sure that your testing methodology is right. It's always very nerve-wracking to sort of go out on the channel and publish that sort of information, knowing that, I mean, I guess people would find it difficult to validate, but at the same time, you want to make sure you've got your results accurate. And when you're just doing it by yourself, it's very difficult, you know, under NDA or whether you're creating new test methodologies or whatever, you know, it's very difficult to make sure that you have 100% confidence in what you're doing. So especially with my input lag testing, I'm fairly confident I've got a good methodology for that. But just because there's not enough information and not enough people testing it, it's very hard to know whether my methodologies are completely valid or 100%. I'm fairly confident in them, but it's all that sort of similar thing.
Yep. I just got my weekly exercise, just chase some crows.
They're not annoying.
Yeah, there was 2 of them.
All right, we're an hour and a half in. This is some good discussion. Let's get some of that out.
I'll do this quick. I'll just quickly tell a story. So back when Matt was the face of the channel, I was still doing all the benchmarking, and we reviewed the GTX 1080. Anyway, we got that through, I think it was Gigabyte. I can't remember the exact details. Anyway, we got the GTX 1080 quite early. We did a day 1 review, and we were given a driver by Gigabyte. Anyway, it turns out Gigabyte gave us the wrong driver to test with, and it was about 10% lower in terms of performance than it should be. No one really noticed. It was still a fast card. But we noticed that the 1070 wasn't... I think it was a little bit slower than the 980 Ti and some benchmarks, and no one else was really showing that at the time. I can't remember the exact details. Anyway, turns out we were showing them performing about 10% lower than they should have been, and that sucked because it was one of the most popular videos we'd ever done. We weren't really copying much flack for it, no one really said much. But then when we got the new driver and I did all the testing again, I'm like, oh man, it's quite, you know, it's up to 10, 15% better. We're going to have to address this. So you can't really just pull a video from YouTube. It doesn't work that well. So in the end, you can go back and see it. Our original GTX, I think it was the 1080 review. It was about 20 minutes long. It's now 1 minute. So what we've done is we've trimmed it all out and we put, you know, when you used to be able to put text boxes? We put text boxes saying, please go check the updated video. And then we redid everything like a week later. 20 games we tested or whatever with the updated driver. So we made a mistake. We thankfully didn't get called out for it. I don't think it wasn't horrendous, but we still was showing the price to performance was all off. All of that stuff was off. So we had to redo it. And it was our biggest, most popular video. And the way YouTube works is you don't want to kill your biggest, most popular video because that kills all the traction and all the benefit the channel got from that. So in the end, we decided rather than delete it, we would just make it, we would just trim all of the video out and say the performance in this video isn't correct, check the new one. So that was all we did there. Apart from that though, I don't know of any other major mistakes that we've made. But you know, we take the benchmarking really seriously. So if our numbers are 10% off, we're not happy about that.
Yeah, this is what I was talking about when you're at the monitor testing as well. Like, it was difficult to figure out whether my testing methods were like delivering accurate, repeatable results because it's a different situation because there's not a lot of content to go on. You
had to benchmark your benchmarking basically.
Yeah. So the response time stuff, I'm 100% sure that that's good. I'd like to increase the average in the future to use more data points, but obviously that's more time. The input lag stuff, I'm very, very sure of, but because it's people, a lot of times people testing input lag, they've used these specialized testing tools that were available for a while on the market that only test over HDMI, which there is a difference in input lag between HDMI and DisplayPort, especially if you've got adaptive sync. So, you know, it's difficult to tell sometimes whether, you know, my method, which is more of a direct input and comparison to a reference monitor, whether it's, you know, completely valid or not. I know TFT Central, I think, uses like, what are those monitors called? The big fat ones that they've just completely...
TFTs?
TFT. No, not TFTs.
I thought they were TFTs.
CRTs.
Oh,
CRTs. TFT's LCD.
Oh, sorry. CRT then.
Yeah, so...
Yeah, CRT, you're right.
TFT Central uses... They compare one display to a CRT to do input lag because CRTs have no input lag. But I wonder how they get the signal to both of those displays. You know, what sort of card are they using? Are they running, like, are they splitting an HDMI signal? They don't say all that, so that makes, you know, it's hard to tell. The high-speed camera stuff I'm not a huge fan of. So it just, yeah, it's very difficult when you're developing a test methodology with people that don't really do a lot of that testing to figure out whether your results are in line or not. And I think my testing has been reasonably in line, but it's just, yeah. You test different displays as well. You test a display no one else has ever tested. How do you know your results are correct?
Yeah.
It's just, you have to back yourself in, I guess. Sriracha piece.
What do you want to try?
You want to try some of those, man?
No, not at all. Nah, not at all. I was going to say I'll have one, but nah.
So let's try something. We've got some drinks in here too, don't we? What's this? Oh, great. Can't even tell what that is. Looks Korean, maybe?
I think we had that drink at Computex. I'm pretty sure we had one of those in the Mega Mix.
So what do you want to try out of these? We've got some jackfruit chips. Have you ever seen this before?
No.
Jackfruit
so we've got... This is all from ZZR Hardy. For
of
those
course.
Of you that... See, what the hell is that?
So this is a Yemen roasted green tea drink. I'm not sure whether they meant to say lemon roasted, but they said Yemen. Like Y instead of the L in lemon. That's that. We've got, here's that.
The really good
Oh,
ones.
these are so good. These are like trolleys, but an off-brand.
Oh, there's the Red Bull ones. The Asian Red Bulls.
Oh, do you drink energy drinks?
Not really, but
I might.
I will be.
I don't know what this is. It's got a heat meter on it. So
So that means I won't touch it.
squid seafood snack bento, but it's got this weird heat meter on it.
Natural grapefruit flavour.
Thai chili sauce, it says on the back.
Salty.
Durian trips, oh my god. That's going to be horrendous. Green grape?
There's strawberry Fanta. That looks pretty safe.
Oh, I'll have a go at that.
Yeah, I'm sure you will. This looks... You should open that. That looks odd.
This looks like urine. Crisp broad bean.
I wish I could say I was halfway.
Oh, you're not even halfway?
Nah.
Oh my
This
god.
has some weird looking stuff in it too.
We'll have to come back and do a second stream and try some more of this stuff.
Oh, it's another batch of Red Bulls. We got one each. That'll keep us pretty wide for packs.
Oh my god, what is in this?
Looks like a tree root.
It looks like a root of something.
Yeah, it's a weed.
Korean ginseng drink.
Oh, it's gin. Okay.
No, it's not gin, it's ginseng. You know that herb, the spice or whatever, the root?
Nah,
Ginseng? Yeah, whatever.
I'll take your word.
You live a sheltered life.
I do. I'm a simple man. I think that's ivy.
Chrysanthemum juice. Brewed from chrysanthemum.
That's hot and
93%.
spicy.
Oh, it's more of these spicy things. Yeah, the seafood bentos.
Oh, that's that mangosteen nectar.
Oh, is that good? Is it carbonated mango nectar?
I don't recall. Wow, these are all really cold. That'll be terrible.
Soursop juice.
Calamansi juice.
Soursop. Ugh.
Oh, I had this last time. This was good, I think.
Strawberry milk.
It was actually good.
So this is basil seed drink with honey, and it's got like floating bits in it.
Well, that looks terrible. And that does that say wasabi?
Yeah. Yeah, wasabi flavored peas. This is too much stuff, said Zeta Hardy, if you're watching this now or in the...
It's just enough, I reckon.
You chuck it over there, yeah. Grapefruit spark. I actually like, yeah, grapefruit drinks. Those are good. What's this?
So yeah, we might do a live stream
Catchy.
tonight and have a sample of these. We'll do that
Yeah.
tonight.
So that's something to look forward to. So the 7 p.m. stream, 7 p.m. local time, so we're 1:40 p.m. at the moment here in Australia.
Good enough.
No, not unless you go over there. We're not going to mega mix it.
No, we're not going to make
Definitely off the tables on the mega mix.
Not before PAX. Is that it?
Yeah, there's a knife in there. So, yeah, we'll try some of these. Fried noodle flavour chips. Sounds good. Yeah, so if you want to come back at 7 p.m, we'll keep all these right here on the table. Ready to go for then.
Yep.
What do you got on your side? Oh, these feel weird. Tamarind candy.
Here we go, I'm getting there. So these are little glass bottles of Red Bulls.
Yep.
Will it give us wings?
Villac rice punch. Maybe if I find something here that I like, I'll have to go down to my local Asian grocer and just like stock up on it. That looks grapey, that one. This one looks like apple, maybe? It's hard to say.
So there we go, little...
Chrysanthemum tea, that's going to be bad. Oh, I think there's two of those. There's a chrysanthemum thing here and here. So,
Smells very Red Bullish.
grass jelly drink.
It's quite good.
Let's get some Nando's, Steve. Let's sign off. Let's go do some Nando's. I'm starving.
I'm ready.
Yeah.
Full chicken, let's do it.
All right.
See you guys, thanks for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed it, and hopefully we catch some of you guys again later tonight.
All right. See you later.